All right, here we go. Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. hanging out here with you. And as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And coming up, I think there's a shocking reality for this entire Niners football team and this organization. They think they're a little bit better off than they actually are. And after the San Francisco loss to the Miami Dolphins, I think Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have to change their team-building philosophy when it comes to putting this roster together, but specifically as it pertains to one certain positional group. And we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more, some takeaways from that Dolphins loss yesterday as the Niners failed to score 20 points for the seventh time this year. When you have a coach like Kyle Shanahan, with the offensive history that he has, that's pretty shocking that San Francisco can't even muster to score 20 points in 7 games this year, and all of those games have resulted in losses. Before we dive in, a few things. I want to say thank you to the Niner gang for tuning into this show. Win or lose, you're making us the go-to leader for Niners coverage right here on YouTube, and that's why we're the largest independently run Niners channel here on YouTube. And during our Niners-Dolphins watch party yesterday, we surpassed 153,000 subscribers. It's the holiday season. You're still supporting the show. You always support the show. Thank you so much. And be sure to hit that sub button because this is going to be a massive offseason for San Francisco, and I have you covered every step of the way. Our show today would not be possible if it weren't for our friends at Prize Picks, by the way, the best daily fantasy sports app in the game and the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Right now, when you play $5, you get $50 instantly. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So make your holidays bigger, brighter, and more fun with Prize Picks. Some picks that we like for Monday Night Football: Green Bay Packers hosting the New Orleans Saints. Jordan Love, less than 230.5 passing yards. It's not a bad Saints defense. Blake Grupe, more than a half field goal made. I just don't see how New Orleans is going to be able to drive the ball into the end zone on multiple occasions. And then Spencer Rattler, he's not good. Less than 176.5 passing yards. So pick more, pick less. Run your game with Prize Picks. Head to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. We'll put that link down below in the comment section and in the description of today's Niners Report. So this shocking reality for the 49ers. After that loss to the Dolphins, I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have to look themselves in the mirror. They are out of playoff contention. That was decided before the Niners played in that game, and this has been an ugly season all around for San Francisco. And I think all year we've heard a lot of reasons for why the Niners have had the year that they've had, and it's been a season from hell, and we've heard a lot of excuses for why San Francisco hasn't won a lot of these games. I think as an organization, the Niners have to realize that they're not good in some key enough areas, and they're not as good as they think they are, and they're not as close to winning as they believe they are. It's not just a couple of things here and there, and I don't think San Francisco has to rebuild. I've talked about that a lot here on the show, but they seriously need to retool their roster. And it comes down to really one specific position group to get this started, and that is the Niners' offensive line. If you've watched this show since I took over in 2021, I've literally been talking about this since the 2021 season. San Francisco as an organization needs to prioritize and fix the offensive line. It's especially come to a head this year, and this offseason, it must be priority #1. And in games that have ended their season in the last 3 years, I think that the Niners have been mishandled, or they have been manhandled, and they've mishandled their organizational philosophy and their emphasis along the offensive line. And I just don't think it's a sustainable way to play football, especially if the Niners are going to pay Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is not a needle mover at the quarterback spot like a Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, where he can really just maximize players around him and just continue to play elite football to the point where the complementary cast around him doesn't matter. I think Brock Purdy needs things around him to go swimmingly, and he is a quarterback who needs a stable foundation in order for him to be successful. Now, that's not a knock on Brock Purdy. That's fine, because there are other quarterbacks in that tier. And quarterbacks with bad offensive line play, you look back at the course of NFL history, if they don't have a good line in front of them, they're not going to perform well. The one Super Bowl that Patrick Mahomes lost was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Chiefs were dealing with a lot of injuries along that offensive line. The Buccaneers in that game set the record for the most quarterback pressures in a Super Bowl. That is the formula to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. What have the Chiefs done since then? They have prioritized the offensive line. When the pocket would get muddied and chaotic around Tom Brady, sometimes he would fold. The same could be said for Peyton Manning. And Brock Purdy is a player who needs quality coaching. He needs talent around him. And his job can be made easier if the Niners are more stout up front. Because poor offensive line play has hurt Purdy in that regard and in that manner. It has negatively impacted the passing game. And this is an offense for San Francisco under Kyle Shanahan that needs to run the ball to be successful. Yet this year, more times than not, they haven't been able to run it, and then the pass game suffers because of that. But they can't run it because this offensive line is so bad. Left guard, center, and right tackle this offseason need to be upgraded. And the Niners are able to do this in an affordable way in the NFL draft. And if you hit on those players, and I'm of the belief you can find really good offensive linemen in all 7 rounds of the NFL draft, those players then become, for an aging team that is an expensive team, cost-controlled assets over the next 4 years. Maybe even 5 years if you take an offensive lineman in the first round, because then you can exercise that 5th-year option. You also have to look at the other teams in the NFC who the Niners will be competing against for NFC supremacy. The Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, they have probably the 2 best lines in the NFL. The Rams this offseason invested so much capital in the offensive line. Look at how it's ended up. They're probably going to win the NFC West. And the Green Bay Packers are a phenomenal team who every year in the draft, seemingly, they take players along the offensive line because they understand the importance there. The Minnesota Vikings protecting Sam Darnold, they have some really good offensive linemen. And so the Niners have to go about it this offseason in the same way that they can't continue to function like this. San Francisco needs to change their organizational philosophy when it comes to valuing offensive linemen. And they've talked about this over the years, how they prioritize skill position players and players who score touchdowns over offensive linemen. It has to stop. Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and Colton McKivitz are not good enough for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. They're not strong enough at the point of attack. They're not strong enough with their anchor. They're not athletic enough. And they continue to get pushed back in the run game and pushed back into the lap of Brock Purdy. And that's what's led to a lot of mistakes for Purdy. That's what's led to him not feeling comfortable, including the game ender yesterday. And we could talk about the game ender yesterday. I don't think that's a decision when the Niners have an opportunity to drive, win the football game, given the time and the situation of the game. That's not a throw that Brock Purdy should make. We've seen him layer balls in there, but I don't think the throw was there to begin with. And Calais Campbell just bulldozes the Niners offensive line. I get it. Spencer Burford's at left tackle. Nick Sakel's at left guard. And Calais Campbell puts the beat down on Purdy. He gets hit as he throws. He throws a pick, game over. But it's a bad mistake there, in my opinion. It's a bad mistake against the Los Angeles Rams to throw a deep ball into triple coverage for Jauan Jennings when he's not a vertical threat. And we'll talk about Purdy coming up here in a little while. But I think all year, and really since he became the starter for this team, the offensive line has not been good enough. And so that leads to a little bit of indecision. It leads to a lack of confidence, and it leads to uncertainty for Purdy because he's not sure if he's going to get the pocket collapsed on him, and he's not sure that he's going to get great offensive line protection around him. And I will say that Kyle Shanahan's protection scheme could use some work. He needs to make some alterations and adjustments there because it is a little bit outdated. It's not effective enough, but it doesn't help that the personnel is not good enough. And of course, that's on Kyle Shanahan and that's on John Lynch. And hopefully they have this type of realization for this football team. And I tweeted this out over the weekend that the Niners and Niner fans should be keeping an eye on both of Texas's offensive tackles during the college football playoff. Left tackle Kelvin Banks, right tackle Cameron Williams. Banks is 6'4", 320, not yet 21 years old, projects as a day one starter in the NFL. He's going to go in the first round. Could be the top offensive tackle taken in this class, given how many quarterbacks go off the board, could be available by the time that the Niners pick, which right now is slated for 11th overall. Could he play right tackle and then take over for Trent Williams in the future? That's a possibility. As for Cameron Williams, primarily a right tackle if you want him to replace Colton McKivitz, and you're confident that Trent Williams can be around for a little while. He's heavier. He's bigger at 6'5", 335. One of his pro comps is Dominic Pooney, who primarily was a college offensive tackle. He's ended up being probably the best rookie guard in the NFL for this draft class in 2024. And I think that Williams can also play guard, but you're wanting him to play offensive tackle. He is probably a mid to late first-round guy at this point. Will Campbell, an offensive tackle from LSU, another player to keep your eyes on during bowl season. And then Josh Connerly out of Oregon. Oregon had a first-round bye in the college football playoff. He's going to be back in action against Ohio State in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. So look out for him as well. So the Niners, to summarize this, I would take an offensive lineman in the first round. If you go edge or defensive tackle in the first round, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, you can get some really good tackles in probably the second or third round, and then good interior offensive linemen after that. But center, left guard, right tackle, they need to be addressed. They are not good enough for this football team. As for Brock Purdy, this is really his biggest issue. In back-to-back games, he's thrown game-ending interceptions. And since he lacks physical tools, arm strength, size, some of the other physical attributes, he has to make up for that by making good decisions with the football. And in the last two losses, he can't. And when you pay a quarterback $50 to $60 million, one, you have to be sure that that investment is going to be a safe investment. It's not a safe investment with Brock Purdy right now. Second, when you give a quarterback that much money, they have to be able to survive all of the chaos around them. They have to be able to survive not having everything going in their direction. That's what the great quarterbacks do. Just because the Jags were dumb to pay Trevor Lawrence and the Dolphins were dumb to pay Tua Tagovailoa, who I thought Brock Purdy was better than yesterday, doesn't mean the Niners have to fork over that money. You could talk about the market being the market, but if I'm San Francisco, I'm just not confident right now, given what I've seen from Purdy when things are less than ideal this year, of giving him all that cash. And for him to make up for the lack of size and arm strength, he has to make good decisions with the football, and this year he is not. It's a red flag for me. Another thing that's just not ideal for this football team, and it's a microcosm of how this Niners season has gone, the Niners are not deep enough as a football team. And I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have to realize that. They wear down late in games, offensively and defensively. The Niners have a minus 53 scoring margin in the fourth quarter. It's dead last in the NFL. And so Brock Purdy has not played well in the fourth quarter. Kyle Shanahan has not coached well enough in the fourth quarter. And defensively and offensively, they haven't performed well enough in that final quarter. That's why they've lost all of these games late, because they don't have the talent or the depth to play a full 60 minutes. They look like a tired and thin football team. And then another microcosm of the Niners season, this was a classic 2024 Niners sequence yesterday, and I'm glad that Kyle Shanahan talked about this after the game, and I had talked about it in the moment when we were live for the watch party. Brock Purdy hits Deebo Samuel to convert a big third down. It's then negated by a sloppy illegal motion penalty on Ricky Pearsall. His second penalty of that variety of the drive. And then the 49ers on 3rd down after that penalty can't block 4 with 5. And then the Dolphins force a field goal and Jake Moody misses the field goal. It's maddening football. It's losing football. It's not sustainable football. And that's the football that we've seen from this Niners team in 2024. And that's why this year has been so frustrating. Be sure to subscribe to the Niners Report. Huge, massive, pivotal offseason coming up, and I can't wait to cover it, frankly. We're so used to, over the last few years, covering runs to the NFC title game last year, to the Super Bowl, but now it's about retooling this football team, and the Niners have to do it, and there's some work to do, and I can't wait to dissect it all.